Welcome back. We now continue with the panel discussion, and the plan is that we're going to discuss among ourselves maybe for 30 or 40 minutes, and then we're going to have a Q&A session for 20 and hopefully 25 minutes. We have two more people joining our discussions. First, Jānis Neimanis, who is a member of the Latvian Constitutional Court, and Katarzyna Szwed from University. Perhaps I can start with a more general question about popular sovereignty, just to get the discussion going. Since it seems to me that one of the arguments that comes up in favor of popular initiative and other forms of direct democracy is that the people must have their say. And there's this invocation of the notion of the people. And yet there is criticism of this idea of the people as the genuine people's voice, etc. And the argument generally is about the people's voice being a fiction, in fact that it's money, in fact that it's different influence groups. And so in that sense, it's a rather fundamental questioning of the very notion of popular democracy. And perhaps even more fundamentally, Josip Schumpeter has said that peoples actually do not have even preferences that we could aggregate. So it's only in the democratic process, perhaps, that people form their opinions. And so the question is, but we who believe in democracy, perhaps as constitutional lawyers or more generally, and particularly in the notion of popular sovereignty, are we not to some extent committed to the notion of popular sovereignty, or there being a people? Is it something that we can just dispense with? And if not, what does it imply for direct democracy? So perhaps we start here.
I would have a problem if we would divide between, saying direct democracy is good or bad democracy and parliamentary democracy is good or bad democracy. First, it is clear a modern state functions with a representative system, a parliamentary system. And direct democracy can only be some kind of amendment additional to the instrument of representative democracy. And from my opinion, it was said that we have these influence groups in direct democracy, and it can lead to a misuse of certain instruments. On the other side, I think the same influence groups are working in parliaments and in the political parties, and I would say direct democracy can be a corrective to representative democracy. And I would say we should make use of these instruments, but we also need a tradition of direct democracy and to establish a certain culture of direct democracy, and not to forget also of participation of the citizens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, talking about people's sovereignty, I would not equalize it with the right to make decisions. It's more like the legitimacy of the government stems from how voters or how people assess the work of the government, how much influence they have on what the government or politicians decide on. And there's no distinction between politicians and voters, in my opinion. In a democratic country, everyone has suffrage rights, everyone has right to stand as a candidate for the parliament. This is what makes a country democratic. And in any case, in direct democracy, the decisions are made by the majority of the voters, not by everyone. And the meaning of people is not that 50% or 51% is people, and all the rest is, well, slaves.
Yes, it's a tricky question if we talk about sovereignty, the popular sovereignty. Then yes, it's an abstract notion, as general will is also an abstract notion, because we have to ask also about the people. Who are the people? Whether they are all the inhabitants who are living in the current in the territory of the nation state, or whether they are only citizens, and so on. So there are many questions, and if we talk about the people, then the people is the major notion while we are talking about populism, because the populists, they claim that they are representing the will of the people. And for the populist parties, the people are never all the citizens or all the inhabitants. Usually for the populists, the people are, for example, native citizens, ordinary people, whatever. And in that sense, yes, if you're talking also about referendums, whether the will of the people is also the will of the majority, or it's something else, those questions will be still considered.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that the most important issues has been already addressed here, that this is a representative democracy that should take a precedence, and I believe that in most of the constitution, I mean in Polish at least, we have it very bluntly written that first the nation, the people are represented by their representatives, and only then it comes the direct democracy. So, as it was said, the direct democracy is just a supplementary thing to the representation made by the deputies. And I believe that sometimes we overestimate the direct democracy, in the sense that this is a tool which is still being used by politicians. And it might be being used well or wrongly. It might be as well a very good tool to present or give the citizens the chance to show their true opinions. But at the same time, it can be a political tool for people to approve what has already been decided in other place. So we have to be very careful in over-appreciating, over-evaluating, giving too much value to direct democracy, because this is a tool that has pros and cons, and it's always the question of how it is used, by whom it is used, and for what it is used. And, well, to my mind, to exercise direct democracy in a proper way, we also have to talk about the maturity of the society and the political awareness, the political culture in a society, how much people are ready for direct democracy. I believe that not all the societies are ready for it. I would question whether we are truly ready for a referendum. As I suppose the numbers of our participations in the elections, in referendums, shows that we are not that much a participatory society. So, at least at the national level, it might be a different story at the local level. So, I think there is a job to be done, and I would still, as it was said before, the representative democracy first, and then direct as something that is of supplementary nature.
Yeah, thank you. We had a case in the Constitutional Court of Latvia regarding financing the political parties, and we had a presentation there that the numbers who are participating as a members of the political parties decreases overall in Europe, and that means also in Latvia, the people don't participate also in referendums. Referendum, in my opinion, is just a mechanism, external form of how the people rules. But most important is that why the people are participating or not, why they are deciding or not. We are living in a time where I think our society is actually satisfied with the overall living standard in Europe, become more and more individual, stay at home, decides, do not participate even in the church. But that means not participating in those events means not an interest in outcome, but also a decision. Vote against is a decision, and not participating is also a decision. We had a referendum regarding the second language, state language, or Russian language, and the first message from the politicians was the society, please do not participate in this referendum. This would be the way how you decide, because the referendum will be not, the result will be not a binding effect. But then the next message was, yeah, participate, but then vote against the second state language. And actually, this referendum didn't succeed in a way that this makes some changes in the constitution, but still this decision was of legal importance because the number of people who voted against the Russian language as a second state language was more than who voted in the favor. And that gives also the outcome of a not succeeded referendum, gives an outcome of a very great legal importance. Also, this situation gives a start for a bigger discussion and also for changes in our state language policy at all. I would say that this was a moment when our nation understands that the national language, only one, the national language, is the question of national identity. So referendum is a mechanism also how to fix and look what the people thinks in that particular moment, to fix this picture. I would say it's a good way how to get a photo in that moment. But more important are we have the second way how to get the result. The opinion from the society is so-called this. Like in Austria was popular initiatives. So we have this internet platform, My Voice, and if you look there are many initiatives, different initiatives to reduce taxes, to starting that I should I check my car once in a year or twice in a year, and so on. So even those initiatives are not binding for the parliament, but still this is a starting point how the people could influence the order of a parliament, and it's very valuable, I would say.
Thank you. I think we're going to have one more round before we turn it over to the audience. I'm very glad that you mentioned this sociological background, that we should keep in mind what kind of a society we live in as we're thinking about this direct democracy. And perhaps you might argue precisely that we live in a society where people are isolated, this is a technological development. And but then the question is, what does it imply for direct democracy? Now, I'm reminded of the fact that in the 18th century, the argument for representative democracy was precise that this is the kind of democracy that is most suited to modern society. This was the argument. Modern society is moving towards division of labor. It is about experts. Issues are becoming ever more complex. And so we have specialists for everything. Why wouldn't we have experts for politics? So this was the argument. And then you might think that in this kind of perspective, precisely direct democracy is an add-on. It's perhaps a necessary corrective to this default, which is representative democracy. On the other hand, in many political theories, the argument has been quite different. It is the idea that actually, since we cannot have direct democracy in a modern society where there are too many people, the states are too large, so actually representative democracy is a kind of a necessary, almost an evil, something that we must kind of accept since we cannot have direct democracy. And then the question nowadays is that perhaps since there's technological development, the idea is that perhaps there should be a renaissance of this first best, in a way, in democracy. And it's not only an idea. Different states have tried out different methods. For example, in France, there has been the national discussion that's been started by President Macron. And in political theory, there's this now idea that maybe AI could be used to build these kind of web-based platforms. And so the idea would be that perhaps technological development actually can make us rethink democracy. And now my question is, we're talking about public initiative, etc. Do you think there are other forms of direct democracy that the technological development actually has made more topical nowadays? Please.
Maybe not so regarding instruments of direct democracy. Okay, you can use the popular initiative much more better if you have these electronically possibility to support and of the electronically signatures of these initiatives. But I think regarding citizen participation, you can do much more than in the past. You can communicate with people online, and you can a little bit close the gap between politics and people. I think it is online tools have the possibility to engage people more with politics than in the past. And I think we should make more use of such tools. And I see also in such wisdom councils, if you use electronically tools, you have more possibilities to bring politics and citizens or inhabitants together. That is also a question. It was the people are not only the nationals of one state, but also the inhabitants from my point of view, and you can involve them with such tools.
Yeah, well, I think it's related to the change of the whole society. It's getting more and more complex, and then that's one of the main reasons of lower turnout in elections or in referendums. 40 years ago in Switzerland, I think it was like 1/3 of the voters always turned out to the referendum, 1/3 never did, and 1/3 was based on what the question was. And now, especially after the use of postal voting, which is very widespread in Switzerland, like more than 80% of the voters just decide based on the question whether they will take part in the specific referendum, whether they have any kind of opinion. And I think this is the same in all countries, in all societies, especially due to the complexity of the decisions. It's difficult to propose one specific formalistic or formal way of participation in democratic decision making. I think the best solution would be to propose different not so formalistic ways, like involving people in discussions. And I think what's the most widespread is currently due to the web, the possibility to post your opinions using the freedom of speech. I think we have a situation where everyone in the society, whether he or her, he or she is an expert or not, can put out some arguments for the decision making.
Yes, it's all about participation and popular engagement. I mean, in the 1990s and in the early 2000s, there was a great optimism and enthusiasm concerning e-democracy, information technology, and all the opportunities it might offer for democratic participation. But nowadays, at least, political scientists are much less optimistic because we have seen that all those technical tools are rather empowering the people who have been already quite active. So it empowers those citizens who are active and who are participating in the democratic process anyway. And those people who are just less inclined to participate, who are less competent, who are less informed about social processes, they usually do not participate also in those new formats the information technology is offering. Mm-hmm. So it empowers those who are powerful enough, and those who are not very interested in, they become even more ignorant.
Mm-hmm. I could not agree more with what has been already said, that again, using e-tools is just tools if we do not get to the core of the problem, which is the participation of the people, the will to participate. Then if we use this or these tools, this is just one solution, but I don't think it's a solution to all of our problems. I came from a country which is conservative as far as we talk about e-tools, e-voting. We have that discussion. We look up to Estonia for many e-solutions. We implemented some of the Estonian solutions to different field of public administration. But e-voting is something that is for now beyond our possibilities, beyond our imagination, and beyond our technical possibilities. But I think that these technical things might be added anywhere that we can facilitate the participation. I mean, whether we gather the signatures for certain motion bill drafted by the people, or whether we gather the signatures for the national referendum or local referendum. If we allow people to do it online, I think that will make a change because it will make their participation easier. And this is common knowledge that we are at times lazy people, and if we get the possibilities easier to be exercised, then we take advantage of it. So yes, technicalities, those small things may speed up or make it easier for the people to exercise. But I think on the way to get the signatures. I mean, in Poland, even this is not possible. Even this is not possible to gather the signatures for submitting the motion for the referendum or for the public initiative. It all has to be done in paper. And the committees or the people who really have the experience of using direct democracy said that this solution might help them a lot. It might speed the process and it might be a facilitator. But in a broadened sense, talking about e-solutions as solution to everything, I don't know. I would rather agree here that the core problem is the participation of the people. And this is something to be dealt, and whether they vote or whether they go to the referendum to the polls or do it via internet, via other tools, I think it's like additional topic.
Yeah, I would say that we can't stop technological progress, but we can use this we should use it in our favor. That means that so the lawyers they try to live in like a so closed bubble and discuss the problems what they think are important. But if we look from the outside, from people's point on the street, how they think, they think, I'm well informed, I can take a decision. Why you think that I'm not able to do this? So everyone thinks that he or she is well educated, informed, but actually I would say that we see in our discussions sometimes that the people should be more educated in a democratic processes and the decision. I fully agree with what was said before in the presentations, that the people are not stupid, but they should be well informed about the outcome of the decision, about the consequences. I like very much this example from 1950s or 60s in Germany. They built up this so-called Bundeszentrale für politische Bildung. That means they started to educate their people after the Second World War. What means the democracy? What means the mechanisms in the democracy? Because and if I look on an example of my state, after the regaining the independence, we didn't have such a training of our society. We just live further. But what I see in a smaller societies, like in a judge conferences, that sometimes you need to just train the people how it is to take a decision and to evaluate the consequences. So I would say that especially for us, for constitutional law experts, it's very important that we train society, not only students, but also society, the members of society who will vote for the political parties. You think, oh, it's terrible fact that the most popular party in Estonia is True Estonians, for example. No, it's not just a mystic how it happens. This is the most common question, but that happens because the people don't have education in how to deal with the consequences of the freedom of so how to use these mechanisms. What would be the consequences? All Russians out of Estonia, only traditional marriage, and so on and so on. This is so in Latvia the same. There are always some part of the society who will vote in the favor of idea that our state are ruled by the one part of the world's government, and the COVID is a part of his they plan. But why it happens so? We cannot say that they are just stupid people. Yeah, so we should look how to educate them, but not to think how we can stop artificial intelligence. No, we should use the artificial intelligence to create more educational materials, more interesting stuff for them to be well educated in those processes.
Thank you. Well, one thing we can surely do is to try out popular participation in this room. So I'll turn it over to the audience and we can take questions for more than 20 minutes now. So please.
My concern is that the louder the talks about liberal democracy, the longer the list gets, the list about decisions that the people cannot take even on a referendum. So I see it as a risk for democracy because if the aim was what Oliver Kask told in the previous session, that we should get quality wording, we should get a decision that is implementable, then I would agree. This really is a good aim. But if the development consists in limiting the people's rights and telling them that they have less and less rights because otherwise they may infringe the rights of some minorities, then I see it as a great risk of democracy. How much do you agree?
May I start?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that question. I think that it's not true that we consider people as stupid voters, or stupid dissidents, that they don't know what they are voting for. I agree here with Jānis that people are well educated. I mean, we all live in our bubbles. We all live in our all close communities, and it's hard to persuade us. But I think that each of us may say, each person, citizen, may say, to my best knowledge, that people try the best to get to know on the issues that they will be voting. But I think the question is the risks are in other place. I think the risk are the political parties, that they may use the direct democracy to manipulate people. The wording of the questions to be used. Sometimes in Poland, like I will refer to my country, to my experience, there were referendums or initiative for referendums given by, even supported by 1 million, 2 million of citizens, which were never actually put it into practice because certain political parties block it in the parliament. And there were referendums which were completely pointless, which turned out to show it, like there was 8% of participants who, it was a clear sign to the politicians that these referendums was an illusion, that the people knew it was an illusion, that it was just on the verge of election, and it was just to gain their support in the election. So I would not say that these are citizens who are a threat for direct democracy. I would say these are political parties who may use direct democracy in a wrong way. And I think none of us undermine the knowledge of the citizens. And I think the threat is in the other place.
If anyone wants to add anything to that, or we can take another question. Yeah.
Okay, I think that the minimal requirement should be that the questions decided at the referendums have to be in accordance to the constitution and to the international law. This is the basic requirement. And of course, if you're looking at our constitutions, all those countries here are liberal democracies, and I don't think that it's a very big restriction here.
Okay.
Just to comment that my presentation before the coffee break, I just was pointing out to the problems which are related to having people's initiative or referendum. Not to say that it's not a good solution to have more direct involvement of voters' will in decision making, and in any case, parliamentary democracy should be the only one. It's just important in organizing referendums or legislating people's initiative to be aware of the problems which might arise, and I think that there are many other means than just voting on referendum to increase the involvement of ordinary citizens in decision making. But anyway, in case referendums are organized, voters should be made available a very good picture of pros and cons of the decision, which is the case in Switzerland, I guess also in Austria, if I remember correctly, and also recommended by the Venice Commission in the Code of Good Practice on Referendums, just in order to avoid the situation of social media bubbles where some voters may not know about some of the pros or cons of the decisions.
Mm-hmm. If I may add, you mentioned Austria and Switzerland. I would say Switzerland is in fact a good example, because you have if there is any referendum, you have informations on the topic from one side and from the other side, and people are informed, and there is obligatory information which has to be neutral from the state to inform the people about the consequences of the decision. Instead of Austria, you had this consultation on the compulsory military service 10 years ago, I suppose, and there was only the question: do you want to maintain the compulsory military service or not? You had not any information. Surely you could gather information if you looked at the statements of the political parties, but there was no general information for the voters, and this is another situation in Switzerland. And as far as I know, in international comparison, Switzerland voters are more are better informed than other one. And public trust in government, also in Liechtenstein, is compared to Austria and other countries quite high.
I would say that the democracy needs not only mechanisms that avoid the abolishing democracy, but also demolishing democracy. That means to protect also the activities which are not in a good faith. So the general principle of law. We have some mechanisms in Latvia too. For example, the main question is to dissolve the parliament after the elections. This is not allowed to bring such a question in a referendum after the elections in a 1-year term. In the second year, then you may offer such a proposal in a referendum. And also there is always the questions which are of importance for opposition parties to they think that this will give them more they will be more seen, so that seen in the country, for example, to vote in favor of president, not who is elected by the parliament, but by the people of the state. This is a question always is interesting and a point for some political parties, but this brings only a noise in society. But yes, there should be a mechanisms to which should restrict demolishing democracy.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much. Does anyone can describe democracy in terms of outcomes as a legal term? Because there is too much, too broad, views on this subject. What is the modern definition, legal definition of democracy? Not through only participation, but particular outcomes, because there are so different concepts here.
Who feels most able and willing to respond to that?
I would say that there is some core of a democracy, some general principles, and of course you can't offer a change of such principle, because then this would be abolishing of a democracy of one important element, like free elections, or in Latvia we talk about this unchangeable core of a democracy, about this basic norm which you can't just offer using this element of direct democracy, using the referendum as a mechanism. And one of this element was also the national language as a core of national identity. If there would be another one language, like a Lithuanian language as a second state language in Latvia, that would be not a Latvia, but a completely different state.
In this example, so specific question, if, for example, minority protection, minorities' rights protection is a part of democracy, or it is contradictive principle in your definition of this?
No, it's a part of democracy, but then is a question whether this proposal stays in the borders of protection of minority, but goes beyond the borders and has a huge impact on a national state.
I think that the protection of minority rights is one of the core elements of liberal democracies. because the basic idea behind liberal democracies is to avoid the tyranny of the majority. So the minority rights have to be protected. But of course, there are some other forms of democracies as well as illiberal democracies. And in illiberal democracies, minority rights are not protected. And they are not the core element of democracy. So this makes the distinction. We have to make a distinction between liberal democracies with minority rights protection and illiberal democracies in which minority rights protection is not important at all.
Well, in order for any voter to take part in the decision making, they have to have the freedom of speech, right to have access to information, right of association, many other fundamental rights, which are not just strictly political rights. And I think any kind of democracy should be considered in order for the voter to make sophisticated decisions or participate in the decision making. It has to be liberal democracy, but of course, well, cats are cute, but we don't want cats to be the only animals in the world. So I think different viewpoints on how to decide. How to define the word of democracy should be accepted.
Yes, it probably remains for another occasion to discuss whether there is not a conflict between different rights, and some people might argue that there is an expansion of certain kind of rights which will necessarily restrict to rights that are core political rights, that are core, have core importance in a democracy. But yeah, Madis.
Thank you very much, Madis Ernits. I would actually like to try to answer the last question, because I think this is one of the crucial questions, what we mean when we talk about democracy in the legal sense. And I have thought about it for a long time. While I was teaching students at the University of Tartu. I think when we start first, it is a complex principle, as legal principle, that determines the process of legitimacy. And it's a specific kind of legitimacy. That means that should be all legitimacy should be reducible to the people's voting. This is very crucial, and there we have to have the chain of the legitimacy that is unbroken. If we break the chain of legitimacy, then we have would have some consequences that are not perhaps in accordance with the democracy. I mean, the very simple, the basic definition is demos kratos. It's the power of people. And I think one of the best short definitions has been given by Abraham Lincoln in the Gettysburg speech. That is power of the people, by the people, for the people. And when we think and try to put this into the legal world, we see that we need quite a lot of principles to manage it, because there are, of course, principles of free election as a part of it, of secret election and so on, all the electoral principles. We should also have in mind the representation, the political responsibility, and we should also have in mind as has been said, the principles to protect the democracy, to protect the democracy against demolition, because this is crucial as well. Whether the minority protection belongs to democracy. I doubt that a little bit, because this is rights protection is more like rule of law, or Rechtsstaat actually. Rule of law is a bit less. But it is, of course, there is no final truth. I just think that on the way to become a legal principle, we need to think about it that as a very complex principle. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps we can take, maybe we could take a couple of questions since we have 10 minutes. Maybe we'll collect 3 and then we'll have the final one. Yeah.
Rait Maruste. I have a particular specific question to Mr. Peter Bussjäger. I understood from your presentation that in Austria it's possible to put referendum law which is passed by the federal parliament. And my question is it possible only during vacatio legis, or it's also possible when law is already in force?
Thank you. Perhaps we'll collect 2 more and then we'll move on. Are there more? Yeah, there's one.
Thank you, Katarzyna Szwed. This is more coming back to the educational part. Much has been said about educating the ordinary citizen. And my question is in regards to the actual functional tools for education. As we probably know that many of the segments that we would like to engage in the democratic process already have a great mistrust of government and politics and state leadership in general. So my question would be, as here we have in the panel people from different legal cultures, what would those educational tools entail? Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, this one over there.
Thank you to Katarzyna, who's actually a former student of mine, Panama Krötepai from the University of Tartu. And I just have a brief comment, maybe also coming back to what Mati Cernit said, that, or just a thought, that the majority of the people in a democracy would not want to have democracy anymore. What shall we do then? Can we by force say we will have or want to have this democracy? And to some extent I also think that democracy should be self-confident enough also to stand for itself and dare to ask the people. And I think that there are people who will not have mainstream ideas. And I think there's the important question and topic that Katarzyna said, and this is maybe even not a question that we can answer or that has to be answered by the lawyers. That's about the education, the democratic education that starts very early on. But I also, to some extent, I have the impression that we're a bit afraid today and try to protect this democracy, so that we're afraid that maybe there can be a majority in democracy that don't want to have this democracy anymore. What would we do then? Thank you.
Okay, so you can ask any other questions just to reflect on what's been said. So I think this will be the last round.
I have only to answer this question. It is, we call it this kind of referendum in Austria, veto referendum, and it means that we have this instrument only on regional level and land level, and it means that people can demand for a referendum within, for example, 8 weeks after the law has passed by the regional parliament, and within these 8 weeks the law must not set into force. And this instrument is similar to Liechtenstein and Switzerland, and in all these countries it is so that there is you can gather within certain weeks the necessary supporters for a referendum.
Yeah, well, to the same question, there are different approaches. I think there are also in Estonia between the 2 world wars or in 1920s it was possible to postpone the enforcement of a law with a smaller amount of signatures in order to collect 25,000 signatures to call for a referendum. There are such kind of means to prolong the legislative let's say process. Concerning the educational side, I think there's no easy answer to that. It's quite complex in order to involve schools with say society or how the society operates. You have to study already at school, and it's much easier to have a meaningful discussion in a society with long democratic traditions when people, all of the society has had access to such kind of education. And this is specifically problematic for post-socialist countries where elderly people don't have sometimes even a clue about state financing, taxation, whatever, and its interrelation. What the Venice Commission has recommended is let's say, either Central Election Commission or a specific institution to provide for pros and cons in one document, let's say 5 pages or 10 pages, pointing out on different effects of referendum or decision made by the people. This institution should not be something like Orwellian ministry who knows the truth, but it's important to have a balanced approach, involve also political parties in composing this document.
Yes, concerning citizens' education. Yes, of course, the schools, universities are playing a big role here, but also actually people are learning about democracy from the democratic process itself. Mm-hmm. If it take the post-communist countries, I guess that both the Estonian, Latvian, Polish citizens, they have learned a lot since 1991 about voting, how democracy functions, what might be the consequences of voting, and how political parties are functioning, what is the role of political parties, interest groups, and so on. So to some extent, the people educate themselves by themselves.
I think that we are fighting for the attention because all the knowledge is over there. It's on the internet. There are articles written by prestigious authors. I think it's quite available, but we are fighting for the attention of the people so they were really interested in their civic rights so that they may exercise it in practice. We in Poland have different campaigns to make people more involved. There are these online campaigns. There are also one of the campaign which arise on the base of the constitutional crisis that we have, that many prestigious lawyers were visiting schools, they were giving classes on constitutional law, which come with quite a plausible outcome. So there are different solutions, and I think that the main one is to get the attention of the people and to make them realize that what we are talking about here, the constitutional law, that this is important, that this is vital, that this is about them, that it has an impact later on on them and their kids and their life. And I think any method that will actually work is good. But I agree here as well that just exercising the democracy by the people is also the good way to learn it, like at the basic level, because we talk a lot about the national level, but also there are instruments at the local level, the commune level, that people may start from the scratch. They can learn there, and if they get a positive outcome, a result, maybe they will be more prone to do it later on in different environment.
Yeah, I would say that after regaining independence, there were more easy questions. So how to give back the property for citizens, and there was some situations where decisions were just and fair solution was completely foreseeable. But now the easy questions, they are out. Now we have more complex questions, and so the society should be prepared for complex questions. And of course, one part is education in schools, and there we see that former approach books, this don't work anymore. So we can use more. We should use more different ways how to give the information to pupils and students. We can't rely on old techniques anymore. But if we look on older people, I would say, I will take a small society, not a society in general, but a small society of judges. How can I change how they think? And this is the way. One is institutions, second mechanisms, and the third legal infrastructure. And of course, we should be louder and more. As a judges, for example, there should be leaders in society who are just louder as members of idea of general world government represented. So just to be louder, more involved. Also judges. Also we are responsible for our society. And we are taught and we know this stuff. And the next one is we should have also specific institutions. That means that some evaluative body who evaluates the proposal for referendum, for a government's act or parliament's act before the adoption and after, who evaluates this, who clearly states what will be the risks of a specific decision. So bring this informed consent, consent also in our daily life. Yes, and sometimes helps also external pressure. Yes, it's sometimes national discussions ends just with external pressure. Thanks God we are in European Union, and sometimes those institutions helps to end those discussions and to decide on the right way. For example, in Latvia we had I think more than 10 years discussion about should we abolish administrative exemption from the administrative liability for judges. So in Latvia there was a law stating that the judge cannot be administratively liable for administrative offense, but only disciplinary liable for example, that he drives the car with a higher speed. And actually, that changes only with external pressure from those consultative bodies, and the parliament changed this law. Because the judges were divided, half in favor and half against.
Okay, thank you. I think, unfortunately, we need to draw this session, first session, to a close. I mean, we've not exhausted the topic, but we continue discussion over lunch and later. Before we move out for lunch, please join me in thanking your panelists.
Thank you.
We have 1 hour and 15 minutes for lunch, so we'll reconvene at 2:15. Thank you again.